Weeks passed since that night in the desert. The world went on. People worked, cities buzzed, and no one knew that the stars had once wept for a boy named Cale. But Ethan knew. He carried the memory of it like a heartbeat that would never fade. Every night he drove out to the same quiet valley, the place where Cale's sister had been laid to rest. The wind there always felt different, softer, like it carried voices only he could hear. Sometimes when the moon was high, the air shimmered faintly blue, the same gentle glow that once surrounded Cale. Ethan didn't know if it was just his mind or something more. But he always whispered the same words, "I kept my promise, kid. Sleep easy." He sat by the small mound, the stones arranged in a perfect circle. In the center lay a small metal plate he had carved himself. It read, "Kyle and Arya, the ones who fell, the ones who forgave." Ethan smiled every time he saw it. He'd made sure they wouldn't be forgotten. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan noticed something strange. A faint hum filled the air, soft, musical, almost like the sound of wind through crystal. He looked up. A light was moving slowly across the sky, not a plane, not a star, but something else. It pulsed blue and white, gentle and calm. Ethan stood. His heart raced. "Cale?" The light paused above the valley for a few seconds, then drifted away, vanishing beyond the mountains. But in its wake, small particles of glowing dust fell like snow, bright, warm, and weightless. They covered the ground, sparkling like fallen stars. Ethan knelt down, his hands shaking. The dust shimmered under his fingers, then dissolved into the soil, and for a brief second he heard a voice. Faint, but clear. "Thank you." Human. It was Cale. Tears filled Ethan's eyes. He looked up at the vast night sky, whispering, "You're welcome, kid." The wind answered with silence, but it felt like peace. The next morning, Ethan returned home to find something unexpected. Near his workshop, his old radio was crackling, though it hadn't worked in years. He turned the knob carefully. A soft static filled the air, followed by a broken signal. Then, a voice, metallic yet calm. "This is Commander Alien of the Elindri Federation. To the human known as Ethan Cole." Message received. Ethan froze. His mind spun. "They heard me?" he whispered. The voice continued. "The boy Cale was one of our last. His sacrifice was not in vain. We have seen your actions. We know there is hope for your kind. When the time comes, we will return, not for war, but for peace." The radio clicked off. Silence returned. Ethan stood there for a long time, heart racing, eyes wide with disbelief. He looked out at the horizon, the same desert that had once been filled with fire and fear. Now it was calm. For the first time he realized something powerful. The universe wasn't as cold as people believed. It could forgive. He walked outside, looking up at the blue morning sky. "Guess you did it, Cale," he said softly. "You made them believe in us again." Years later, the valley where Cale rested became something of a quiet legend. Travelers came there, drawn by stories of strange lights and whispers carried by the wind. They didn't know the truth, but they felt it. The peace, the kindness, the silent connection between two worlds. Ethan grew older, his hair silver like desert dust. But he still returned every night, sitting by the grave under the stars. Sometimes children from nearby towns came to listen to his stories. He would smile and say, "It all started with a boy who fell from the sky and asked a human for help." Their eyes always widened. "Was he scary?" they'd ask. Ethan would chuckle softly. "No," he'd say. "He was just like us, lost, scared, and full of hope." Then he'd point to the stars. "And now he's up there, watching. Every time you see a blue light move across the night sky, that's him saying hello." The children always smiled and waved at the heavens. Ethan did too. One night, as he sat alone under the stars, a soft breeze touched his face, warm, glowing faintly blue. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Miss you, kid." For a moment, he could almost hear laughter, light, gentle, and familiar. When he opened his eyes, two bright stars shone together in the night sky, side by side. Ethan smiled. "You kept your promise, too." He leaned back, looking at the endless sky. The same sky that once divided worlds, now joining them in peace. Above him, the stars burned brighter than ever. And in that vast silence, two souls, Cale and Arya, drifted through eternity, no longer lost, but finally home. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the sand in gold and blood red. Ethan's truck sped down a dirt road, throwing up a trail of dust behind it. Cale sat in the passenger seat, silent, his glowing wristband pulsing like a heartbeat. Ethan's eyes kept flicking to the sky. He had seen those drones again, black, fast, and too quiet for any human design. "They weren't from Earth. Are they after you?" he asked, his voice low. Cale nodded, his expression calm but his eyes full of fear. "They are seekers, machines built to hunt my kind. They never stop until they complete their task." Ethan gripped the steering wheel tighter. "And what's their task?" "To erase all traces of us," Cale said softly. "Including me." A chill passed through Ethan. He looked at the small figure beside him, the alien boy, so fragile, yet holding secrets older than mankind itself. "Then we'd better stay ahead of them," he muttered. He turned off the main road and drove toward the mountains where old mining tunnels stretched for miles underground. He knew that place well, a ghost of his father's past. Cale glanced at him. "You are not afraid, human?" Ethan smirked slightly. "Terrified. But running away never fixed anything." Cale looked down, the faintest smile on his lips. "That is why my sister believed in your kind." The truck rattled as it reached the rocky trail. Dust swirled behind them, catching the sunlight like smoke. But above, something dark was moving, a large triangular shadow cutting through the sky. Ethan slammed the brakes. "What the—" A metallic shriek echoed across the desert. The object descended fast, unfolding wings that shimmered with red light. It wasn't a drone. It was something bigger, something alive with machinery. "Get down," Ethan yelled. The craft fired a beam that hit the ground just behind them, exploding sand into the air. The shockwave threw the truck sideways. Ethan fought the steering wheel, coughing as dust filled the air. Cale raised his hand, the bracelet glowing fiercely. A thin blue shield appeared for a moment, deflecting debris. "Go!" he shouted. Ethan floored the gas pedal. The truck roared forward, bouncing violently over rocks. The ship followed, shadows stretching across the desert floor like claws. Inside the cab, alarms from Cale's wristband beeped rapidly. Symbols flashed, warnings, messages Ethan couldn't read. "What's it saying?" Ethan shouted over the noise. Cale's voice shook. "They are calling reinforcements." "Reinforcements?" Ethan barked a bitter laugh. "Great, just what I needed." The road narrowed, cliffs rising on both sides. The ship's red lights passed overhead, scanning. Ethan drove into the canyon, praying the walls would block their signal. After a few minutes of silence, Cale exhaled. "They lost us. For now." Ethan slowed down, parking near a dark cave entrance. "We'll hide here," he said. Inside, the cave smelled of earth and old dust. Ethan turned on a lantern and sat against the wall, his breath heavy. Cale stood quietly, touching his bracelet again. A faint hologram appeared, the same girl from before, his sister. Her image flickered, speaking softly in alien words. Cale closed his eyes, whispering something under his breath. Ethan watched in silence. There was something deeply human in that moment. A boy talking to a ghost of his sister across galaxies and death. After a while, Ethan asked, "What happened to her?" Kyle looked up, tears glimmering in his glowing eyes. "Your people took her. Long ago, they studied her, used her blood to make weapons that could destroy planets. She died on this world alone." Ethan felt a weight in his chest. "And you came here to find her?" "To give her peace," Cale whispered. "To stop the machines that use her power." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we'll do that together." Cale blinked, surprised. "Why would you help me?" "I am not of your kind." Ethan smiled faintly. "Doesn't matter where you're from, kid. You're just trying to save family. That's something I understand." For the first time, Cale smiled. A real small smile that lit the dark cave. But before peace could settle, a distant rumble shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. Ethan grabbed his lantern. Cale's bracelet turned red. "They found us again," he whispered. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then let's give them a chase they'll remember." He turned off the light, heart pounding. Outside, the sound of engines filled the sky. The hunters had returned, and this time they weren't just after the alien boy. They were coming for the human who dared protect him. Night had fallen again by the time Ethan's truck rolled to a stop near the base of the old mountains. The sky above was quiet now. No drones, no red lights. just the whisper of cold wind brushing over the rocks. Ethan turned off the headlights and looked at Cale. The boy's skin faintly glowed blue in the dark, the light pulsing from the cracked wristband. "This is the place," Cale whispered. "The signal is strongest here." Ethan looked around. All he could see were broken fences and piles of rusted metal, the ruins of what once was a government testing ground. His father used to work here decades ago before it was shut down. Ethan sighed. "Figures. My old man used to call this place Sector 9. Said there were things here even the generals didn't understand." Kyle stepped out of the truck, his bare feet sinking slightly into the cold sand. "Your kind built walls around secrets," he said softly, "and buried the truth beneath them." They walked toward the remains of a bunker entrance. A thick steel door stood half buried under dust and debris. Ethan knelt, brushing off the dirt. "Looks sealed tight," he muttered. Cale raised his hand. The wristband glowed and the door began to hum. Tiny blue sparks spread along the metal surface, tracing the edges like living veins. Then, with a groan, the old door slid open, releasing a cold breath from the darkness inside. Ethan stared. "Remind me not to mess with your tech, kid." Cale gave a faint smile and stepped inside first. The hallway beyond was long and silent. Their footsteps echoed against metal walls marked with faded warnings. Restricted access, level 7. They walked carefully, Ethan holding a flashlight while Kyle's light guided them from ahead. The air was thick, old, like the place hadn't breathed in years. As they went deeper, Cale suddenly stopped. His wristband beeped faster. "She's here," he said. "I can feel her." Ethan followed his gaze. Down the hall, a thick glass door stood sealed. Beyond it, faint blue light shimmered. He wiped dust off the control panel beside the door. It was still active, humming softly. "Guess power's still running," Ethan said. "Let's see if we can—" Before he could finish, Cale touched the glass. The bracelet glowed brighter than ever, and the door slowly opened with a hiss of air. Inside was a large chamber, cold, sterile, and eerily quiet. The walls were lined with machines, all humming with faint power. At the center of the room stood a tall cryogenic pod covered in frost. Ethan stepped closer and froze. Inside the pod was a girl. Her face was peaceful, her eyes closed. Her skin glowed faintly, the same color as Kyle's. Kyle's hands trembled. "Sister," he whispered. His voice broke. "They kept her here." He touched the glass, tears forming in his glowing eyes. The machines beeped softly, responding to his presence. Ethan's throat tightened as he watched the boy tremble, half in awe, half in grief. "I thought she was gone," Cale said, "but they trapped her spirit. They used her to power their weapons." Ethan glanced around and saw large generators connected to the pod by thick cables. The labels on them read, "Alien Energy Conduit, Project Seraph." He felt sick. "They turned her into a power source," and he said quietly. Kyle nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "They fed on her soul." Suddenly a loud alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed. Ethan spun around. "What now?" Cale's wristband displayed warning symbols. "Security drones!" They detected movement. Ethan grabbed a metal rod from the corner. "You find a way to shut this thing down." "I'll hold them off." Cale shook his head. "You'll die." Ethan smiled grimly. "Then let's make it count." The door at the end of the corridor burst open and mechanical drones rolled in, red eyes glowing. Ethan swung the rod, smashing the first one. Sparks flew. Kyle raised his glowing hand. A wave of blue light rippled out, shutting down 2 more. But more came. Too many. The machines filled the hallway, firing beams of energy. "Kyle," Ethan shouted. "Now!" Cale slammed his palm against the pod's control panel. The lights flickered wildly. The girl's eyes fluttered open for a split second, and a faint smile on her lips. Then the entire facility shook. A burst of blue energy exploded outward, throwing Ethan to the floor. Every drone froze, their red lights dying instantly. When the light faded, Kyle was kneeling beside the pod, his sister's hand resting in his. "She's free," he whispered, tears falling silently. "She can rest now." Ethan got to his feet, his ears ringing. The air smelled of ozone and dust. "We need to go," he said. "This place won't hold." Cale nodded, but his gaze lingered on the pod. "Goodbye, sister," he said softly. "Sleep under the stars once more." As they left the facility, the ground trembled behind them, the machines inside shutting down forever. Ethan looked back once, then up at the night sky. It felt heavier now, quieter. But deep in that silence, something new had begun. The first spark of truth, buried too long beneath human lies. The night wind howled across the desert as Ethan and Cale climbed out of the crumbling facility. The door behind them hissed shut, sealing forever the ghosts and machines that had once fed on a girl's soul. Ethan leaned against his truck, breathing hard. His clothes were torn, his arms bruised, and his heart heavy. "We made it," he said quietly. "We actually made it." Cale stood still, looking back at the bunker. His eyes glowed faintly, but there was no joy in them. "She is free," he said softly. "But her power is not," Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Cale raised his wrist. The cracked bracelet glowed again, showing a holographic image of the facility's underground levels. Hundreds of cables and reactors still pulsing faintly. They built a core, deep below. It uses her energy to power human weapons. Even now it breathes. Ethan's stomach tightened. "So that thing's still running?" Cale nodded. "If it stays active, her spirit will never rest. The machines will keep feeding." Ethan stared into the darkness. "Then we end it." Kyle turned to him, the blue glow reflecting in his wet eyes. "Ethan, if I destroy the core, I will die with it." The words hit like a punch. Ethan's voice cracked. "There's gotta be another way, Cale. You just found her." "You can't." Cale smiled weakly. "I came here knowing I would not return. This was my last journey, my last wish." Ethan's chest felt tight. He had seen brave men before, soldiers, engineers, heroes, but this small alien boy, gentle and scared, was the bravest soul he had ever met. "Then I'm going with you," Ethan said firmly. Cale shook his head. "No, this is my burden. You helped me when you didn't have to. Now let me protect your world from mine." Before Ethan could answer, the sky above flashed red. A rumbling sound echoed from the distance. Cale looked up, his eyes widened. "They are coming!" High above the clouds, dark shapes appeared, hunter ships, dozens of them, spreading like vultures across the night. Ethan clenched his fists. "Guess they don't want us shutting it down." Kyle touched the bracelet again. A wave of light spread outward, forming a shimmering shield around them. "It won't hold for long," he said. "You must go, Ethan. Not without you." Cale smiled sadly. "You humans never listen." The ground trembled as more red beams sliced through the sky, hitting the sand nearby. Explosions flashed, heat washing over them. Ethan grabbed Cale's shoulder. "Tell me what to do." Kyle looked at him, tears glowing blue on his silver skin. "Take this," he said, removing the cracked bracelet. The light dimmed slightly as it left his wrist. "It holds her memory and mine. If I fail, you must find a way to bury it under the stars. That will set us free." Ethan's throat closed. "Cale, you don't have to do this." Cale shook his head. "I do. Promise me, human." Ethan's voice broke. "I promise." Cale nodded once, then stepped back, his body glowing brighter. "Goodbye, Ethan. You showed me kindness when your kind gave us none. Remember that not all humans are cruel." Before Ethan could reach him, Cale lifted his hands. His whole body flared with brilliant blue light. Energy waves rippled through the desert, shaking the ground. The sky above filled with lightning. Not natural lightning, but alive. Like veins of light dancing across the stars. The alien ships fired beams downward. But the energy from Cale's body consumed them, burning through the sky, tearing them apart. One by one, they vanished in bursts of light until only silence remained. The desert glowed blue for a long moment, then faded into darkness. The air smelled of ozone and ash. Ethan fell to his knees, the bracelet clutched tightly in his hand. "Kyle," he whispered, voice trembling. There was no answer. Only the wind, soft and endless. Then the bracelet flickered, a faint hologram appeared. Cale's voice, gentle and fading, spoke from within it. "Tell her, I kept my promise. Please, human, lay my sister to rest." The light dimmed completely. Ethan stared at the sky. The stars shimmered quietly, untouched by the chaos below. A single shooting star crossed the horizon, and blue, bright and beautiful. He whispered into the silence, "Rest easy, kid. You're home now." The desert night swallowed his words, but far away in the ashes of the destroyed facility, the ground pulsed once in a soft, peaceful glow. like the heartbeat of a sleeping world finally at peace. The desert was quiet again. Too quiet. Ethan sat beside the ruins of his truck, staring at the faint glow still spreading across the horizon. The explosion from the facility had ended hours ago, but its light still flickered inside his mind. Cale was gone, the boy who had fallen from the stars, who had trusted a stranger who had smiled through pain, was now part of the night sky he came from. The cracked bracelet rested in Ethan's hands. Its blue light was fading but still warm, as if holding the boy's heartbeat. Ethan ran his thumb over the smooth surface, remembering Cale's last words. "Please, human. Lay my sister to rest." He looked up. The stars above shimmered faintly, and for a moment he imagined one of them blinked back at him, blue, gentle, and alive. He wiped his eyes and stood. "I made a promise," he whispered, "and I'm keeping it." Ethan drove through the night in silence. His truck rattled over the dirt road, engine coughing, headlights dim. The world felt heavier now, not just from loss, but from what he had seen. Humanity had done terrible things in secret. They had stolen from the stars, broken something sacred, and buried the truth under metal and fear, but not anymore. He followed the coordinates that glowed faintly from Cale's bracelet. The holographic map projected a single red dot deep in the mountains, the place where Cale's sister's body had once been buried. As dawn approached, Ethan reached the valley. The air was cold and still. He parked the truck and stepped out, the bracelet in his hand, glowing brighter now as if it recognized the land. There was a soft humming sound, deep beneath the ground. Ethan followed it to a small mound of earth surrounded by strange glass-like stones. The bracelet pulsed faster. "This must be it," he whispered. He knelt down, brushing the sand away. Underneath he found something half buried, a metallic ring glowing faintly with blue symbols. It wasn't just a grave. It was a resting place built by Cale's people long ago, hidden from human eyes. Ethan placed the bracelet gently on top of the ring. For a moment nothing happened. Then the ground beneath him began to glow softly, forming patterns of light. The bracelet floated upward, spinning slowly in the air. A hologram appeared, Kyle's sister. Her form was faint like mist in moonlight. Her eyes were peaceful now, no longer filled with pain. Ethan stared in awe. "Who are you?" he whispered. Her voice was soft, melodic, the same tone Cale used when he spoke gently. "You are the one who helped my brother. You gave him peace." Ethan swallowed hard. "He kept his promise. He freed you," the hologram smiled, "and you kept yours." "Thank you, human." The bracelet glowed brighter. The hologram knelt beside the glowing ring and pressed her hand over it. Light spread outward like ripples in water, and the air filled with a calm, warm energy. "His spirit is with me now," she said. "We are home." Ethan's eyes burned. "He wanted you to rest under the stars, together." The light around them shimmered. The sister looked up at the sky, and her voice echoed gently. "Then here under your sky, we will sleep and dream of peace." The bracelet split into two beams of light, one blue, one white, swirling together like twin souls dancing in the air. The light rose higher, fading into the dawn. Ethan watched until it disappeared among the stars. His heart felt heavy yet strangely calm. He whispered, "Goodbye, Cale. Goodbye, little one." As the sun rose, Ethan sat on the edge of the valley, watching the light crawl over the sand. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, the one he used for engine notes, and began to write. "If anyone finds this," he wrote, "remember this. Not all who fall from the sky come to destroy. Some come to heal, to remind us that kindness is the last light in the dark." His name was Cale, and he was more human than most of us will ever be. He closed the notebook, placed it near the glowing stones, and stood up. When he turned to leave, he saw something strange, a faint blue feather lying on the sand where the bracelet had been. It shimmered softly in the sunlight, as if it had fallen from heaven itself. Ethan picked it up, smiling faintly. "Guess you left me a souvenir, kid." He tucked it into his jacket pocket and started walking toward his truck. Behind him, the ground shimmered once more, two beams of light rising together, merging into the morning sky. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt peace. He had kept his promise. And somewhere beyond the stars, Cale and his sister finally rested, together, free at last. It was a quiet night in the desert, too quiet. The wind whispered across the dry sand, carrying only the sound of insects and Ethan's old truck engine. He was driving home after fixing a broken water pump at a nearby farm. The road was empty, and the sky above him glittered with stars like scattered diamonds. Then, the stars moved. A blinding flash tore across the sky, burning blue and silver. Ethan hit the brakes, his eyes wide. It wasn't a shooting star. The object twisted, spiraled, and crashed somewhere beyond the rocky hills, lighting the horizon for just a second before everything went dark again. The ground shook softly under his feet. He stared for a long moment, breath caught in his throat. Curiosity battled fear inside him. He was just a mechanic, not a soldier, not a hero. But something deep inside whispered, "Go look." He grabbed his flashlight and headed into the darkness. The air smelled of smoke and metal. The sand was warm beneath his boots, and a faint humming came from over the hill. As he climbed, he saw it, a crater still glowing faint orange. In the center, something small was moving. Ethan stepped closer, the beam of his flashlight trembling in his hand. He expected fire, maybe wreckage, but not this. It was a child, or at least, it looked like one. The figure was thin, about the size of a 10-year-old boy, but his skin shimmered faintly under the moonlight, like silver mixed with soft blue light. His eyes were large, glassy, and full of pain. Ethan froze. "Hey, kid, are you okay?" The boy turned his head slowly. His lips moved, but the words came out broken like an echo through water. "Please, help, before they come." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Who's coming?" The boy's hand glowed weakly. A strange bracelet, no, some kind of device, blinked red and blue on his wrist. It was cracked and sparking. Ethan crouched beside him. "You're hurt. Don't worry, I'll get you out of here." He reached out carefully. The boy flinched, his breathing sharp and quick. "I won't hurt you," Ethan said softly, his voice calm, steady, the way he spoke to injured animals. The boy looked into his eyes. For a moment the fear faded. He gave a small nod. As Ethan lifted him, the boy felt light, too light, like hollow bones. His clothes were strange, smooth as glass and faintly glowing. The humming from the crater grew louder. Ethan turned. Something was coming. The night sky shimmered again, but this time with moving shapes. Dark, mechanical, silent. They were flying low, scanning the ground with thin red beams. The boy's bracelet flashed faster. Ethan didn't think. He ran. He carried the boy down the hill across the sand, his boots slipping on loose rocks. The red lights moved closer, searching. He reached his truck, opened the back door, and gently placed the boy inside, covering him with an old blanket. "Stay down. Don't make a sound." The boy nodded weakly, eyes wide with fear. His skin glowed faintly under the blanket, the light fading in and out like a heartbeat. Ethan jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine. The truck roared to life just as one of the lights swept over the crater behind them. A low hum filled the air, not like any plane Ethan had ever heard. He pressed the pedal to the floor. The truck bounced over the rocky road, headlights shaking wildly. In the mirror, he saw the lights moving and following Meng, but then one by one they turned away, disappearing into the dark sky. For a moment, silence returned. Only the sound of the engine and the boy's slow breathing filled the cabin. Ethan exhaled deeply, gripping the wheel. His mind raced. What did I just find? Who was chasing him? Then a soft sound came from the back seat. A whisper. "My sister," the boy murmured, voice trembling. "She's still out there." Ethan turned slightly, eyes meeting the reflection of those glowing blue eyes in the rearview mirror. "Your sister?" he asked. The boy didn't answer. He was already slipping into unconsciousness, breathing shallow. The bracelet on his wrist blinked slowly, projecting faint symbols in the air. Symbols Ethan couldn't understand. He didn't know it yet. But that moment, that single act of kindness, would change everything. For him, for the boy, and maybe for all of humanity. Outside, the stars were silent again, but somewhere above the clouds unseen eyes were watching, and the hunt had just begun. The desert was still dark when Ethan finally reached his workshop. The old metal building stood alone near the highway, filled with broken engines, old tools, and silence. He parked his truck behind it, glancing at the sky one more time. No red lights, no sound, only the endless stretch of stars above. Inside, the air smelled of oil and dust. Ethan turned on a single lamp, its yellow light flickering. He gently carried the alien boy onto a small workbench, laying him on an old blanket. The boy's skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight trapped in water. Ethan sat beside him, heart pounding. He didn't know what to do. Should he call someone? The police. The military? No, they'd take the boy away. They'd lock him in a lab. Ethan had seen enough government news to know how that story ended. He took a deep breath and looked at the strange bracelet on the boy's wrist. It pulsed with blue light, almost alive. The cracks on it glowed faintly and strange symbols danced across its surface. "Let's see what you are," Ethan whispered. He grabbed his old laptop and a scanner. The wristband reacted the moment he brought it close. A soft hum filled the air and a blue hologram flickered to life, right above the boy's arm. Ethan stepped back in shock. It was an image. A girl, young, glowing, almost like the boy, but older. Her eyes were gentle and sad. She looked straight at Ethan as if she could see him. Then a voice echoed softly, broken, full of pain. "Please, human, can you lay my sister to rest?" The hologram faded. Ethan blinked, stunned. "What the hell?" He looked at the boy. His chest rose and fell slowly. The light from the bracelet faded again, leaving only silence. Ethan sat down, rubbing his forehead. His heart hurt, that voice. It wasn't angry or alien. It was sad, deeply human in its grief. Hours passed. The first light of morning began to touch the desert outside. The boy stirred, opening his eyes. Ethan quickly moved closer. "Hey, easy. You're safe. You're okay." The boy blinked, confused. "Where am I?" His voice was weak but clearer than before. "You're at my workshop. You crashed out there in the desert. I brought you here." The boy looked around. The walls, the tools, the light. "You are human." Ethan gave a small smile. "Yeah, name's Ethan. What's yours?" The boy hesitated, his gaze distant. "My name does not sound like yours, but you can call me Kale." "Kale," Ethan repeated softly. "All right, Kale, you're safe here. No one knows you're here, but—" He pointed at the wristband. "That thing of yours, and it showed me something, a girl. She said something about her sister." Kyle's eyes widened. "You saw her?" He sat up suddenly, wincing from pain. That was her message. "My sister, she was taken. Humans captured her many years ago. She never came home." Ethan frowned. "Captured? That doesn't make sense. Humans don't even—" He stopped himself. Maybe they did. Maybe the world was darker than people like to believe. Kyle looked down, voice trembling. "She was peaceful. She came to your world to learn. But your people feared her. They locked her away and used her mind for weapons." Ethan's throat tightened. "I didn't know." Kale's eyes filled with light, not just glow, but emotion. "I came to find her, to bring her home, but they hid her body. I can feel her signal. Somewhere here, somewhere under your sky." He touched the bracelet gently and the blue light spread, forming a small star map above the table. It showed Earth, and several glowing dots scattered across it. One of them blinked red. "That's her," Kale whispered. "She's calling me." Before Ethan could speak, a loud buzz echoed from outside. He ran to the window. 2 black drones were flying low, scanning the area with red beam, the same as last night. "They found you," Ethan whispered. Kale's hand glowed, and the wristband emitted a high-pitched sound that jammed the drones for a few seconds. Sparks flashed in the sky. Ethan grabbed his keys. "Come on, kid. We can't stay here." Kale nodded weakly, his voice calm but sad. "I didn't want to bring danger, human. But I have nowhere else to go." Ethan looked at him, truly looked, and saw not an alien but a lost child carrying the weight of a dead sister and a dying world. "You're not alone anymore," Ethan said. "We'll find her together." Outside, the rising sun painted the desert gold, but behind that light, dark shapes were still moving. The hunt hadn't stopped. It had just begun again, and this time both worlds were watching.